Hey, it's Gris. Gris is a gorgeous game, and I'm going to critique it. And you know that when you critique something, it kind of destroys the art. So if you have any interest in this kind of game, go play it before you watch this review or this critique, because it's something that is gorgeous and well worth playing on its own without some annoying guy talking in your ear about it. One of the most interesting things to me is that Gris is getting a lot of flack for bad gameplay and very, very aggressive themes. And that's interesting because art games don't normally get that kind of critique. I mean, sure, people who don't like art games say it, but it's very rare for someone to say, this game is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, it's just too bad that it's unplayable. That's really rare. I mean, if you think about it, Gone Home and Night in the Woods and Life is Strange, they all had bad gameplay. They all had primitive themes, but they worked because those things were not the main draw of the game. Why are people noticing those same things in Gris? I think that it's because Gris's pacing is bad. You have to understand how to use your strengths to pull the player, and then you can use your weak elements to tide them over or to bind things together. Your weak elements should never be the thing that the player notices, and that's definitely true in things like Night in the Woods and Gone Home. The gameplay in Gone Home is never something that challenges the player or asks the player to do something. It's always just what's between you and the next story beat. So let's go ahead and give an example. Gris's opening cutscene is a long one, and we'll just talk over it. So I may have mentioned that Gris is a gorgeous game. This is an amazingly beautiful game. And the Berliners do a great soundtrack for it. But the theme is immediately smashed in our face in about 5 seconds. This is a game about loss. It's about a woman who had something and lost it. There's someone supporting her and now that person is gone. If you want to make a blunt force, real world analogy, her husband is about to die. The problem is that everything is aligned with this theme. Like, it's super aggressive. She loses her voice. She falls to the ground. Her husband disintegrates. Everything goes wrong at once in the same direction. And that is something that you have to earn. Being this aggressive right from the start, with so many arrows shouting in the same direction, that's not something you can just do, not outside of like an illustration. When you're trying to give an experience, you have to make sure that the player can buy into that stuff. By the time you get this sort of imagery from Life is Strange or Gone Home or Night in the Woods, you're already halfway into the game. And you can buy it because you've already felt the power of these images, but we haven't. So to be honest, this is where I would have started. I would have started with the falling from the sky because this is amazing. The Berliners carry it completely, and the feeling of falling from this bright blue sky into this dusky desert plain is really powerful. And I wouldn't have had that theme hammered in my face. You don't want to hammer the theme in someone's face. It stops being subtext and starts becoming text. That's not what you want. Especially if you're planning on making them think about the theme, in which case explaining it to them probably isn't the best bet, because then their thoughts about the theme are going to be, yeah, we already know about it. So what do I mean by that? Well, I'll show you. First we have to get through this unskippable cutscene where they go through all the credits. Are you done yet? Done yet? Now obviously I'm being annoying. The game unfolds at a much more graceful pace when someone isn't blabbing over top of it, but I am trying to talk about the unfolding of this pacing. And here's where the game actually starts. You start as this poor, sad lady. So, this is too much. If there was no hand scene, this would be perfect, because we'd be like, why did this lady fall from the sky? Why is this lady so sad? What's going on? It would have engaged the gears in our head. We would have been like, oh, this is interesting. And that's precisely what the game dev is trying to do with their level design, even if they don't realize it. They've given us this extremely minimalist art. They've given us an interaction that is slow and uninteresting, And that means that we're supposed to be thinking, why? What? How? But we've already had that explained to us. We already know what's happened. She lost her giant statue boyfriend. So having us think about that isn't really going to engage us any. It's like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? Oh, you already told us what's going on here. There's nothing to think about, so I'll just hold right and hope it ends soon. Now, obviously, the silence of this scene as opposed to the music of the Berliners is very, very good. It's just a shame that they explained to us what the theme was so that we wouldn't be able to think about this in any sort of meaningful way. She's so sad because her statue boyfriend died. So sad. How sad are you, lady? Are you sad? Show me how sad you are. Oh, she's so sad. So sad. Yes, the theme is pretty aggressive, but at last we're now into the gameplay. So I understand all of the problems that people have with this gameplay, but it's not a problem with the gameplay. It's a problem with the pacing and the integration, and we're going to talk about that in detail right now. But first things first, jumping is a joyful act. If your art game has jumping in it, your main character is a joyful character. Night in the Woods understood that. Even though May is extremely depressed, her jumping is joyful and energetic and fun, and they just embraced that. And that's something that these people can't do because their character is supposed to be like just a dismal pit of despair. Whee! I'm a dismal pit of despair. I don't think it can work. I am very hard-pressed to think of a jumping that is not joyful. Now, the other problem here is that we're given a very minimalist world with very few things to interact with. Normally that's fine from a pacing perspective, but that means that the player is always going to be searching for something. If they can't find it in the art or the visuals of the level, they're going to assume they're supposed to find it in the play. And that's where people start getting annoyed by the play, because they aren't being engaged by the level. There's no part of Night in the Woods where the gameplay is difficult or challenging unless you're doing something really weird and off the wall. But Night in the Woods is very careful to make it so that their levels are vibrant and full of people to talk to and full of ledges to jump onto. This, on the other hand, is a dismal, flat level with nothing to do. And once again, we see all of the arrows are pointed in the same way. The character design is dismal, the animations are dismal, the level is dismal, the design is dismal, the level layout is dismal. The music is savagely lonely. These are all arrows pointing in the same direction. And again, that's too many arrows doing the same thing. There's no loose ends for the players to think about. There's no mysteries for the players to mull on. It's all just right there, all the time. And it doesn't improve once we get the critters in the level. I hesitate to call them enemies, because they also are designed with the same premise. They are designed to make you feel lonely. And they do that, but again, it might not be the right idea. There's too many things pointing in the same direction. There's not enough to actually engage the player because they're way too busy just being railroaded down this one path. Here are the sad little creatures, leaving us alone with nothing to love. Why won't you love me, my pet cat? Now that my boyfriend is dead, I need a pet cat, but it doesn't love me either. I'm being almost grotesque about this just because I have to get through the level in order to explain the level, and there's nothing else to do at the moment. There are parts of this level that are really good, and that's what I'd like to show you. I'd like to show you those parts. Here's where the gameplay begins. You pick up a little glowing speck. Will you be my little friend, my glowing speck? So, I mean, that's like light of hope, right? It's something that you found that gives you some measure of solace after your boyfriend died, or your husband, or whatever. but it's not too aggressive. I'm not thinking, oh my god, this theme is so on the nose. I'm thinking, that's fine. I understand that. That is just not on the nose enough for me to buy it. Hooray! This part is also fun. Walking up things like this is always going to be at least moderately engaging, because you have to do something, even if it's just jumping across a small pit. Night in the Woods was a pro at this. You can play their dream sequences and really get a good grasp on how to take a small amount of content and use the level to pace it properly. Because if you went into the dream sequence and it was just 4 random animals oompa banding at you in a circus in the sky, that would have been too aggressive. But by using their crappy gameplay of just wandering around levels like this, they paced it out properly, and they make it feel like you're uncovering those Oompa Band members instead of just having them thrown in your face. And that is the secret of how to make these kinds of levels fun. There is a secret. I can't get to it. We'll have to get to it in a minute, and it's actually a bad part. We'll talk about that when we get there. Also, the speed is a little bit low. Either the camera needs to be either a little bit closer or the character needs to be a little bit faster, because this is really a slog. Oh, and they always keep taking control away from the player. Don't. In an art game, here is a very, very basic tip. Never take control away from the player, except for like the last 2 or 3 seconds of each level. Because if you take control away from the player, that means that the player is considering each piece of this game separately. And that's not what you want, because there's only one part of your game that shines, the art. So if you keep taking the control away and then showing them the art in a cutscene and then bringing them back into the level, well, you've ruined it because your level isn't very good. You need to make sure that the art captures you as you move through the level, not take away control and show you art so that the level can go back to being boring. That's just not a very good design. So here's the secret that we found. Yay! And you're like, yeah, I found a secret. Cool. I don't know what it does. And I've got to walk all the way back through this really, really slow walk, and there's nothing happening. Maybe if some kind of like giant flying flag whale came by, that would be cool. But there isn't such a thing. What a shame. So we'll just continue on. Now, it's fun to be able to see where we're supposed to go, right? That's basic design policy. There's a glowing dot up there. We know we can get there. We just have to figure out how. But it's only fun if the level has some kind of navigation challenge. There's no challenge here. It's just all linear. Oh, giant flag space whale, where were you when I needed you to spice up my life? Why are you coming by now that I am actually doing something? What poor timing. Why did you take control away from me? Just do it while I still have control. Because then it's a fun interactive thing, right? Like, it's in there, it's coming as I'm moving, so now there is not a challenge, but a little bit of a hint of a danger that if I move too fast, I might beat them to it. I have to wait for just a touch. Anything to make it a little bit more engaging. Like that. That's how you do it. They didn't take control away from me that time. And I'd like to say that they only take control away from you for like the first time you see anything, but it's just not true. They take control away from you all the time. And once again, we have a lot of holding right to do. This game has a lot of holding right, and some of it is really ill-timed. Here is the greatest crime in this level. They took control away again. You want to guess why? Because they have art to show me. So here's the thing. This is freaking gorgeous. This is freaking amazingly beautiful. But it's not paced very well. They've decided to do their art separately from the rest of their level. And that means that I really notice that there's nothing in these levels. These levels feel empty. if I had started to spew, you know, bloody constellations up into the sky as I was walking, that would be an engaging element. I would have been able to feel like I was doing something. I was moving through the level and things were happening. That's why in an art game, you always have to embed your art into the level, like the world-famous Nightmare Oompa bands in, in Night in the Woods. But, I mean, they get the same thing in every kind of game. In Life is Strange, your rewind powers are embedded into the game world. They are not, like, taking control away from you to do them. In Gone Home, they don't give you cutscenes where you listen to tapes. You put the tapes in and they start to play, and you can hang around or not as you see fit. These are things that are always integrated into the levels rather than separately, because if you put them separately, then the levels turn out to be pretty empty. Like this. Come on, let's do a joyful dance. Oh, you're not joyful? But you're jumping. Jumping is joyful. Icons, hooray. Well, this part looks cool. I wonder whether we'll have to do some, like, jumping or something will happen as we're walking. Oh, no, they'll just take control away again. So, why didn't they have us climb to the top of something tall and then the stars could embed themselves in the sky as we walked past? Put it into the level. Gotta integrate the art into the level because your levels suck and the only thing that works is the art. And by that, I'm not saying that your levels suck. I'm saying that there's no gameplay. Your levels have to suck because there's nothing to do in the levels. And your levels are gorgeous. This is some of the most gorgeous art I've ever seen in a game. It's just that it has to have more, and there isn't a more to have at the moment. So I'm skipping one of the elements. There is a very long climb where they take control away from you to show you the name of their game. And I think we can just skip it. I'm hoping we can just skip it. Let me skip it, please. Yeah, good. Because this part's great. Woohoo! So this is a way to engage the player. Obviously, there's nothing actually happening here. But the player is moving and they can jump. There's no challenges exactly. But it's something where your eye is stapled to the screen and you're really interested in what's going on. And that's how you do it. There's nothing in this part of the level in terms of gameplay. But sliding down this slope of blood is something that feels engaging and interesting. And I really enjoy it. This is how you can design this sort of game level. That was pretty fun. I hope that they don't take control away from me. Yep, they took control away. Because this cool artwork, they couldn't trust the player. They couldn't configure it so the player would actually get to watch that happen around them. What a shame. Well, let's go see another cool part. Oh, I guess it's after the next bit. Sorry. I have these bits confused in my head a little bit. Another really long walk right that's completely empty. There should be something here. Maybe some windmills. Those would work pretty well. Now what I'd like to do is skip this, because this is the thing I was trying to skip. I guess it's not skippable. They really, really want you to see the name of the game. Let's see if we can... Nope, they took it. They took control away a long time ago. Now, it doesn't even make any sense, because you can friggin' show that logo while I'm holding right. There's nothing in that part of the stage that would interfere with your beautiful logo while I'm walking right. You could just integrate it into the game. This part's pretty cool, though. That's great, how they zoomed in, they gave us control, now we have a much tighter camera. This is nice. I like this. I also love this part over here, where the level uses parallax to establish some really nice perspective tricks. That's friggin' awesome! Parallax tricks are a wonderful, wonderful thing that you should always use if you can, because it's something that will interest the player. They'll go, oh, that's cool, it lines up. In fact, there have been entire games built around that. So that's great. This, not so much. I'm thinking about the theme right now. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to think about something. What can I think about that's interesting? Nothing. Why don't you make it so that there is something going on? Like just anything. Birds that are coming out of the ground. A giant dragon on that mountain. The mountain collapses. These things, there's sand, so that if I stand still, I sink into the ground up to my waist. Doesn't have any penalties or anything, but it just makes me move slow for a little bit. Anything to make this feel like there is a point. Otherwise, all I can do is this joyful jump. Alright, so here is the part of the level where they have a storm. This storm is really annoying because it happens every 12 seconds or so, and you can technically avoid it by staying indoors. Let's not, just to show you what it's like. But it's not interesting. It's close to being interesting. It's an idea of how to make this level interesting, but it doesn't actually work. All the pieces are there, but they needed a little bit more effort to make them work together. I love how the storm is predicted by the windmills. You see how the windmills are flying? I love how a lot of these things are paced just so that you can get through to the indoors, but they don't tell you that the indoors are safe. So, in your first time through, you probably don't even realize that you can take shelter from the storm. And instead, you keep getting stuck out in the open, and it's just like 5 seconds where you can't do anything, and it knocks you backwards. A lot of the platforms are sized just perfectly to allow you to slide backwards just the right amount. Ah, I just made it. Another sliding section. This is a really well done section, just a little teeny little blip. It's great. I love it. And once again, there's more storms. Now, keep in mind that if you're playing this, chances are you're being blown back and delayed by these storms considerably every single time, and it just takes 4 or 5 times longer than I'm making it look. It's not fun. And if you get blown off, you have to climb all the way back up. It's a real pain. And that is something where the game is telling you that the gameplay is challenging, but that's the thing. There's not enough to this game to make the challenging gameplay worthwhile. And that's why you rarely get this kind of challenge in other story games, because that draws attention to the weakness of the gameplay, rather than allowing the player to use the gameplay as just an intermediary, you know, between elements that are actually good. And this is why so many people have noticed the gameplay, because the gameplay is telling us to notice it, even though that really shouldn't be what they want to see. Now, I basically perfected that because I wanted to show you this. This is so cool! This is amazing. If the game had been like this more, it would be just the best. This is an amazing idea. You're on a level that's inside of a monster, and it's walking who knows where, and you're trying to get stuff done. That is really nice. I love it. I love it. I think I have to get through this really fast, though. There we are. Gotcha. Because if you're too slow, you can't go down there. So, there are some really great ideas and some really bad ideas, and it all boils down to whether or not the player is being told to notice the gameplay and the theme, because the gameplay and the theme aren't worth noticing. More specifically, you shouldn't notice those things. Oh wait, I think it cracks open. You shouldn't notice those things because they are things that tie the game together rather than things that are specialties. Collapse. I have never been to this part before. I can't seem to get it to collapse. I don't think there's a special move I can do or anything. I swear that I have to, like, fall across it, right? I would think. I guess not. Well, it doesn't really matter. That's really all I have to say about the level of this first level in Gris. I think that the rest of the game is probably going to be similar in terms of taking too much control away, being too aggressive with the various pieces to the puzzles. Don't have all your arrows pointed in the same direction, because if you do, the player will not have anything to think about. Don't take control away from the player to show them stuff, because you desperately need to show them stuff in your levels, or else they'll be too boring. Don't shove your theme in people's faces, because it's best served up as part of the story. These are the tips I can give, but again, this is just my opinion. Perhaps you disagree. Either way, I think Gris is a lovely game.